Hello everyone, how are you? Just get myself all set up so that we can see ourselves. Right, all good. Let me get live as well on Instagram. Welcome everybody. Thursday tea time, history chat live. I'm back in the office this week. Some of you will have seen me last week gallivanting because I'll tell you more about what I was doing shortly, but I was in Kenilworth and I had been in Warwick. So I'm going to tell you a bit about that. Hi everyone, I can see you all joining. How are you? Let me know how you're doing. Give me a heart, etc., so that I can check that you can hear me. Because one thing I did do whilst I was out and about last week in Kenilworth is break my microphone so that I use with my phone. So let me know if you can hear me okay, please, if you don't mind. It is currently, if you can see, the microphone I have is for the YouTube channel, but it currently has wrapped around it the little microphone that I use, which is usually attached to my lapel, and this week is not, because I managed to break the clip. So I shall get a new one very soon. In fact, if you'd like to help me with that, apparently you can now select badges on Instagram. You can do super chats if you're watching on YouTube, and that can help me get a little bit of cash together to get a new lapel mic. That would be ever so helpful. But yes, we have lots to talk about, so I'll tell you more about fantastic. Thank you for letting me know you can hear me. Thank you, everyone. Brilliant. Oh, I've got a new badge. Thank you. I wish you are the first person to buy me a badge on Instagram. Thank you so much. Excellent. Hi, Joanne. Hi, Ivan, David Lottering, Tabel. Who have we got on? Let me know if you're watching on YouTube as well, so I can say hi to you. I can see the chat. That was partly why I was so delayed setting up so I can see everything. So yes, so we're back. I'm back into my office. I'm not here next week. I am actually going abroad for the first time. Thank you, Colleen. I can see you bought me a badge as well. Thank you. Yeah, I'm going abroad. And Joanne, thank you. I'm going somewhere sunny, but I'll let you know about that when I'm back. But yes, last week I was in Kenilworth. Now I'm not going to speak too much about it today because, thank you, Colleen. Tomorrow on Visiting Tudor Britain. Nice to meet you. Thank you, everyone who's joining for the first time. Yes, tomorrow on Visiting Tudor Britain, I'm going to host it tomorrow. This is the weekly chat we do on Instagram. Hiya, Marianne. Marianne in California. How are you doing? So yeah, every Friday at 4 o'clock, I do a Visiting Tudor Britain chat with the Tudor travel guide, Sarah Morris, and Deb Royal, who is Tudor Times and also Tudor Places magazine, which I'll mention a little bit more about later. And we do 4 o'clock and we rotate it round our profiles. So tomorrow I'm hosting and I'm going to be talking about St Mary's Priory, otherwise known as Kenilworth Priory, and St Nicholas's Church. So some of you will already know a bit about that because you were with me on my live last week when I was actually there. But if you didn't hear that or you'd like to hear about it again, please join me tomorrow at 4 o'clock. That's tomorrow. And but the reason I was out and about last week was actually because I was at the Warwick Words History Festival. Now, it is History Festival and literary festival season around here at the moment. Hi everyone, I can see you joining. Hi Philip. And who else? We've got Max, May, Ali. So bad at the handles. Anyway, thank you all for joining. I think I'm a lot today. I'm going to slow down. I was at the Warwick Words History Festival, and I was there on Thursday to see Joanne Paul, Dr. Joanne Paul. Now I'll show you her book because I'd already read it. Thank you, Deborah, for the badge. Thank you so much. I was there to see Joanne on the Thursday. I went back on the Saturday, which I'll tell you about shortly as well, to see Joanne. She has written this book called The House of Dudley. And The House of Dudley is predictably about the House of Dudley. She was doing the talk in St Mary's Church in Warwick. Now, for any of you who don't know, if you didn't see my story last week, St Mary's Church in Warwick, or I think it's the Church of Collegiate Church, I don't know its full name, I think it's the Collegiate Church St Mary's anyway, has the Beauchamp Chapel. Beauchamp, spelt Beauchamp, Beauchamp, Beauchamp Chapel. So called after the, yes, isn't it a pretty cover? We'll come back to that actually in a minute. The chapel, named after the Richard Beauchamp, who provided the money and instructions in his will for its construction, is where Robert Dudley and his older brother Ambrose Dudley are buried. Robert Dudley alongside his final wife Lettice Knowles. Sorry, I'm going to have a sip of my tea because it is tea time live now. And so Joanne is giving her talk a stone's throw, literally a few meters away from the burial place of Robert Dudley. And of course, her whole book is about the Dudleys. I started I actually listened on Audible. Anyone who's followed me over the summer knows I'm big into Audible when I'm on holiday, and then generally go and buy the book as well. Well, of course I had to, because Joanne was going to sign it for me. Now, before I forget, let me tell you, I can't find the signature page, that I will be interviewing Joanne in a couple of months' time for my YouTube channel and my podcast, which I will tell you about in a minute, because I finally got it to work. I've relaunched the podcast, everybody. So it is now possible to listen to all these interviews on the podcast as well. You don't just have to watch on YouTube. So, but I will be interviewing Joanne for the podcast, for the YouTube channel, in a couple of months' time. If you're a patron, look out, because of course, as usual, you will get to ask your own questions of Joanne. So this gives you a bit of time to read the book as well, and then you can put your questions to Joanne. It's a great way of, obviously you learn about the House of Dudley, you learn about the Dudley family, but you're also, of course, learning about the Tudor monarchs, who they served, because they are there for the entirety of the Tudor era. And they are pivotal in the politics and the events of the time. So you get another perspective on the Tudor monarchy, which I find brilliant, and will be another aspect of another book that I want to tell you about in a moment as well. So hi Anandita, how are you doing? I'm great, thank you. I hope India is not too warm. I don't know what it's like at this time of year. I know you were suffering in the summer. Oh, good. Maria's got hers on the way. Philip doesn't do Audible. He's a tactile man. Well, you can have the experience of page turning. It's only in hardback at the moment, which does make it a little more expensive, especially if you have to get it posted to you. If you want a link to the book, if you go to my Amazon shop, it's amazon.co.uk/shop/British history, and all the books that I recommend are in there. I think it's a bit more difficult if you're in America. I don't know why Amazon make it so difficult. Surely they know that we're talking to people all over the world. But anyway, so I apologize if it's not as easy as that. But if you go to that shop and you can see the link, then you can at least know which book you're looking for. I think it was Lou has mentioned the cover of this book. It is beautiful, isn't it? Hi, Aria. How are you doing? Now, of course, if any of you have been to the Tower of London and you've seen the etching, it's graffiti really, but beautifully etched into the Beauchamp Tower, isn't it? And it has the representations of the 4 Dudley brothers who were in the Tower alongside Guildford, and you've got roses, lilies, gillyflower, and you can ask me flowers now. And the idea is brightly coloured. These are pivotal people, but apparently all the flowers, and I hadn't noticed this until Joanne pointed it out, are kind of wilting, they're kind of withering. Think about this. The Dudley family rise to prominence with the first Tudor monarch, Henry VII. Edmund Dudley becomes effectively his, how should we term him? He is the one who helps expand the coffers of Henry VII through incredibly disturbing means, in my opinion. It was actually a chapter that in the book I was listening to as I fell asleep, and it disturbed me so much that I had to listen to the next chapter to be able to go to sleep. So you have the rise of the Dudleys with the first Tudor monarch, and you have the Dudley family line dying out, the direct family line dying out with Elizabeth. So it is a family who was there from the beginning to the end of the Tudor era and alongside the Tudor monarchs the entire time. So I would thoroughly recommend that book if you're into your Tudors, which I think a lot of you are. And I will be interviewing Joanne, like I say, in a couple of months' time. So if you're a patron, then look out, because I will ask you, I will let you know when to submit your questions, which I will put to Joanne. If you're not a patron, it's £5 a month, and that is only one of the benefits that you get of being a patron. You get to ask your own questions of people I'm interviewing. On that note, the other talk that I went to, this was on Saturday, and I was very pleased to meet her finally. And it was Estelle Parank. Now, I have just released my interview with her on YouTube and on the podcast. So pleased I finally got that sorted out. And this is her book, Blood, Fire and Gold. I've spoken about it and Estelle before. You can see my interview with her on YouTube, and like I say, you can listen to it on the podcast, which is on Spotify and Apple, and I will update my link tree in my bio so that you can find that podcast easily. It was a bit of a surprise that I got it sorted out. Anyway, so I was listening, went and met Estelle, and her talk was fantastic. Estelle is a very, very fun lady, and very well, she gives, I mean, she's clearly highly intelligent, but she gives such a fabulous perspective, because Estelle, for anyone who doesn't know and can't guess from her name, is French, and she has that perspective. She can bring a different perspective to the Tudors. So her book is actually a dual biography of Elizabeth I and Catherine de Medici, or Medici. Someone who's Italian, tell me. I don't know where the emphasis should go. And so not only do you learn about Catherine de Medici, who was the Queen Mother of France, she was the wife of one king and the mother of 3. And she is a lady who maybe we don't talk about as much in English history. Of course, she's French, but you know, she's pivotal. She's the relationship between her and Elizabeth makes a difference to how Elizabeth acts, especially as well when it, or not especially, but also including their they've both got a relationship, of course, with Mary, Queen of Scots, so that comes into the book as well. And I also talk to Estelle about that on the interview. So you get to learn about Catherine de Medici and Elizabeth through that relationship. So again, it's another perspective on a monarch, a Tudor monarch who we think we know a lot about. So if you read The House of Dudley and Blood, Fire and Gold, and then I would also recommend reading The Sisters Who Would Be Queen by Linda Delisle. If you read all of those together, you will get a really, I think, a much wider, rounded knowledge of the Tudors and especially Elizabeth I. So I would recommend that. So have a look at those books. Definitely recommend them. Have a look at my interview with Estelle, and you can listen to it on the podcast. But I've just interviewed, because of interviewing Estelle recently, patrons got to ask their own questions of Estelle. If you are a patron, you get to see that extended interview, and also you get it ad-free, because why not? Michael, hi, how are you? What do I think about the film The Lost King? And have I ever read The Daughter of Time? I haven't watched the film and I haven't read the books. I'm afraid I can't tell you. In fact, somebody asked me if I could recommend a film about British history yesterday. And I realized that I don't know. I haven't watched historical fiction for such a long time. I don't know. Wait, what could you say was a really good film about British history? People talking about getting the books. Yes. Well, so these books are in hardback here at the moment, which I'm presuming is meaning that they're probably haven't had their release date somewhere elsewhere in the world yet. Another book, let me tell you about, I haven't got it yet, but if any of you know Gareth Russell, I've spoken about him before, I've interviewed him before. He comes with me on my tours. He has released his book today, Do Let's Have Another Drink. I think, again, the release in the US and other countries is delayed, slightly behind here. But from today, you can get that book if you're in the UK, and you don't have too long to wait if you are not. But Do Let's Have Another Drink, excuse me, is a sort of biography by anecdote of Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. And when Gareth was on tour with us I think it was in July, he actually read us some extracts from the book. Not only that, just talking to him as we were going around, he would come out with these things that he'd included in the book, and they are brilliant. Colleen has pre-ordered hers, fantastic. I can't wait to read it, because like I say, I had a bit of an insight into it already, and it was sounding fantastic. So another thing, I have moved on to Substack. Now, some of you may or may not know Substack, and I will update my link in my bio. Substack is going to be where I now send my newsletters from. It's still completely free, but it will also have a link. That's also where I'm hosting my podcast. So you can get the podcast through Spotify and Apple, but you will also be able to get it on Substack if you are there. So I will put the link out in my bio. If you're already a subscriber to my newsletter, don't worry, it is you've been transferred over already. So Lisa says, Sisters Who Would Be Queen was a wonderful book. I hadn't read about them before and hadn't realised there was such a threat to Elizabeth. That book, which is up there on my shelf, so I've brought loads of books down to share with you today, and yet there's still one up there that I want to share. That book changed my perspective actually on Elizabeth and on the succession crisis, because I found it harder and harder to not forgive, to, what would the word be, kind of make sense of her not naming a successor. So on reading that book, it made me just think it was inexcusable, in my opinion, for her to not name a successor, remembering of course that she didn't actually name James either. But she effectively destroyed the Grey sisters. And they did have a claim to the throne. They had a legitimate claim to the throne. So if you want to understand that, yes, the Sisters Who Would Be Queen by Leanda de Lisle is a fantastic book. And she writes in a style that I find really easy to consume and get through quickly. It's not hard going, and it will open your eyes, I think. Now, I've got Leanda. She is as one of my speakers for the Stuart Summit. So let me tell you about this before we get much further, because the Stuart Summit tickets go on sale tomorrow. If you're a patron, you already have access to those tickets, and you will see that you have a 10% discount if you're a patron. Sorry, let me see. I was really chuffed when I saw we were transferred automatically, because I had behind on emails, and when I saw the initial email, I was like, right, yeah. So because I'm hosting all of the hello from Mexico, hi, how are you doing? Because I'm hosting all of the newsletters on Substack, it means you can actually it's like on a timeline, so you can go back down and have a look at all previous. I mean, there's only one on there at the moment because the first one last week. So you can go down and have a look. Every time I post something, it will be there. And the Stuart Summit is going to take place on the 18th till the 20th of November. And it is an online history festival. But I realised while I was sitting there listening to Estelle, listening to Joanne, is how fortunate I was, very fortunate, to be able to attend these events, to be able to listen to these speakers. And so thank you, Tara. And 5 people have bought me a badge. Thank you so much. If anyone wants to buy me a badge, I was explaining earlier that my microphone's broken, and it would really help me get a bit closer to buying one that to replace it. So that would be fabulous. So yeah, I was really fortunate to be able to sit and listen to these speakers. Obviously the books are fantastic and the interviews are fantastic, but to listen to them speak as well, I've just felt very, very fortunate. Now that is what I'm trying to do with the Stuart Summit. It's online, and there's 6 speakers, and we are covering a very interesting but vast amount of the Stuart era. So obviously the Stuarts, I've just mentioned James I is the first Stuart. The next king, the next monarch after Elizabeth is James. He's already James VI of Scotland, and he's going to be become James I of England. Sorry, Clean says audio is better on YouTube. Because that's because I haven't got the mic that I normally have into my phone for Instagram. Lottie's trying to buy one and it's not going through. Pooh, that's a bit bum. I'm just noticed I've got purple hearts and white hearts. That's very exciting. How does that happen? How wonderful. Thank you as well if you're buying super chats on YouTube. Thank you so much. So the online summit is basically a way of bringing talks to you wherever you are in the world. And of course, there is a time difference sort of problem. So all the talks will be available until the 31st of January. So there's plenty of time to actually get hold of the talks. They'll be going live along with a timetable over the weekend of the 18th till the 20th of November. And I will tell you what those talks are in a moment. And they are available, like I say, till the end of January to everyone who's bought a ticket, and the tickets are on sale until the 18th of November. They go on sale tomorrow at 12 noon. Like I say, if you're a patron, if you're a member over on my Patreon, which is patreon.com/British history, you can actually get hold of your tickets now, and you will get an automatic 10% discount as long as you follow the link that's in the post on Patreon. That so there's another benefit of being a patron. Patrons, it's £5 a month, basically, people. You get to ask questions of historians that I'm interviewing. You get discounts and early access to tickets. Oh, a blog. So the blog goes live, where are we? Week after next. So you get the interview and we get one blog a month. And I have written it. I wrote it yesterday on the Scottish crown jewels. I was actually going to do, I will come back to the Stuart Summit in a minute, but let me tell you about this. I was actually going to do the blog about the Scottish and the English, British, don't actually know what the right term for those are, crown jewels. But the Scottish ones are so interesting in their own right that the entire blog is on the Scottish crown jewels, also known as the Honours of Scotland. And that will go live in a couple of weeks in Patreon. So you get all this stuff. It's very good. You can actually go in and choose a higher tier if you want, but you don't get any extra. It's just if you're feeling incredibly, generous, which some people are, which I'm very, very grateful for. So back to the Stuart Summit. If you have a look on my story today, there is a little trailer for it. We have, so you might have already seen who we've got speaking. I have listened to all of these talks already, and I can tell you they are, I was hoping they'd be good, but they are incredibly good. So we have Gareth Russell speaking about Charles II. His talk is actually titled Charles II, the Party King, the Politics of Promiscuity. Now, if that doesn't get you interested, I didn't realise just how many children Charles II had. Wow. We have Illyri Lynn, who was one of, she worked at historic royal palaces in their I don't know, I was going to say fashion department. It's not the fashion department. What do you call it? Like, looking after the pieces of clothing and whatever that they have there. And she's done a talk about styling the Stuarts, how they used clothing to portray a certain message, but also actually physically how you dress a Stuart monarch or noble person, whatever. It's that's really interesting. We've got Katrina Marchant, Dr. Cat, who has the Reading the Past channel on YouTube. She also is one of the History After Dark crew. Historical dress, thank you, Melissa. Just fluffing my words today. I'll have a bit more tea. So Katrina Marchant is talking about at the Stuart Summit about propaganda through imagery and this divine right to rule belief that the Stuart monarchs had, especially the early ones, and that changed throughout the Stuart era, of course. And she's talking about that. We have Julian Humphreys, who we had on History After Dark recently. He's talking about the English Civil Wars. Hi, Debbie, over there in Italy. How are you doing? Hi, hello. Hi, Sam. Sorry, I didn't say hello. And chewing gums. Hello. Julian's talking about the English Civil Wars. Now, if you're thinking battles equal boring, not in this case. He's not just talking about the battles, he's talking about the politics, what was going on around it with the relationships during the English Civil Wars. And the talk, I've titled it Reformation, Not Revolution, the Real Intentions of the English Civil War Conflict. Because remembering that we always see history backwards and therefore we know how it ended, and what we need to always be careful of or mindful of is that we don't look at it as if everything was working towards a foregone conclusion, a plan, if you like, because that is not necessarily the case, and that is indeed not the case in the English Civil War conflict of the 17th century. So that I think you'll find very, very interesting. And we have Leanda de Lisle. She is talking, who I mentioned is the author of the the Sisters Who Would Be Queen book, but she's also the author of a new book about Henrietta Maria. Henrietta Maria was the wife of Charles I. She was a Catholic. Charles I was the head of the church, the Protestant Church of England. They never came together on the matter of religion. And Henrietta Maria's legend, her, is blackened. In fact, Leander refers to it as the Black Legend of Henrietta Maria. But she talks about the real woman who Henrietta Maria was, and incredibly interesting character. And of course, remember, she, as the wife of Charles I, she has her husband's beheaded. She's here for the entire time of the English Civil War. So I think you'll find as well that these talks overlap and knit together. So like I was recommending reading Blood, Fire and Gold and the House of Dudley and the Sisters Who Would Be Queen, because then you get the stories from different perspectives. I think you'll find this with the Stuart Summit and the talks that we're doing. You'll find them overlapping and really helping you to get a broad understanding. The Stuarts, by the way, are absolutely fascinating. The Tudors catch our attention, yes, but wait till you get into the Stuarts if you're not already. So Leander de Lisle is talking about Henrietta Maria, and our sixth talk, and I'm not sure which order these are coming in, but this is the order I'm telling you about them, is Antonia Keeney. Antonia Keeney is the social historian at Blenheim Palace. Now, Blenheim Palace was built by the first Duke of Marlborough and his wife, Sarah Churchill, also known as the favourite of Queen Anne. Incredibly pivotal woman. Not one I'm sure I would have liked if I'd have met her. And actually, Antonia and I, it's sort of a conversation, this talk that we had. And we're not sure between us, actually, whether we would have liked her. But there is no getting away from the fact that she is incredibly interesting. Let me just answer this question. Oh, goodness. L. Blackton. So where do you get tickets for the Stuart Summit? How do we access the videos? I'm in the US. Does it matter? Nope, you can. It doesn't matter. You can access the Stuart Summit from anywhere in the world. I'm hosting it on Eventbrite. And so once you buy your ticket, you get a link to the event page, which I will build over the next couple of weeks with the actual videos in, and they will go live over the weekend of the 18th till the 20th of November, and then you'll have access to them until the end of January. And they go on sale from 12 noon tomorrow. There are 30 early bird tickets, by the way. So there are 30 tickets. The first 30 people to buy a ticket get a 10% discount. Silver Nature Spirits. Johnny Depp is playing King Louis the 15th, and I work with him. We are related. To Johnny Depp or to Louis the 15th? I'm presuming Johnny Depp. Wow, that's pretty cool. That is pretty cool. Keep an eye out on mainly Instagram, but I will share things on YouTube as well about the Stuart Summit coming up. And yeah, so like I say, if you're a patron, you already have access to buy your tickets. Just go over to Patreon and follow the link. If you're not, then best way is to subscribe to my Substack, which, like I say, as soon as I've finished on here, I'm going to pop onto the link on my bio and update it so you can do that. You may already be on that already. And you'll be able to you'll get an email tomorrow with the link to the tickets from 12 noon. Like I say, jump on it quick if you're interested, because the first 30 tickets have a 10% discount. What else have I got written in my notes? Oh yes, tomorrow I am interviewing Kate McCaffrey. So this is another book that I'm going to recommend. Have any of you got this already? This is the book that accompanies sorry, chewing gums. Did you see Johnny Depp has gone clean shaven? He looks like Ozzy Osbourne. Things have gone a bit odd in the world. Oh dear. Oh, sorry, I've missed a few comments. Let me go back. Right. Isn't she the plonker? Oh, right, we're talking about Sarah Churchill now. Isn't she the plonker who had an entire house of historical importance demolished because she was having a strop in regards to the architect doing the renovations for her? Yes, she did. She had the Palace of Woodstock completely and utterly demolished. Because, yes, you're right. She had wanted I think she'd wanted it demolished. I can't remember that Antonia talked about this in an interview I did with her that's on YouTube. And she her architect basically thought, no, what I'll do is I'll make it into a sort of summer, I don't know, retreat, palace, whatever, in the grounds. She got so annoyed that he had gone against her instructions that she just had it demolished. Oh no, I think he'd yeah, and he'd renovated it so he could live in it during the building of the palace. Remember, the palace was being built at this point. So yeah, pretty spiteful. But like I say, I'm not sure I would have liked her, but incredibly fascinating person to learn about. Now, tomorrow I am interviewing one of the co-authors of this book. She is also a co-curator, assistant co-curator at Hever Castle, alongside Owen Emerson, Dr. Owen Emerson, and it's Kate McCaffrey. So I'm interviewing Kate McCaffrey tomorrow. Thank you to patrons who have submitted your questions to her. Kate is the one who did for her master's at university. She did research into Anne Boleyn's Book of Hours. There are 2 books of hours at Hever. Her research relates to one of them, and Kate uncovered more inscriptions in the book. So handwritten inscriptions in the book. We know Anne Boleyn's inscription is in the book, but she uncovered others which had been erased and deleted. And so I'm speaking to her tomorrow about that. And her research was about a year ago. So I'm hoping that maybe there's some extra things she's been able to find out since. So that interview will go live, what we're now, October. So that interview will go live in November. So, but this is the book that she co-wrote with Owen about. So it's called Becoming Anne, and it goes alongside the exhibition that Hever have had on this year about 500, commemorating 500 years since Anne Boleyn appeared at the English court in 1522. I have another book. Sorry, just in case none of those have pickled you, pricked your interest. Maybe I should stop. No, I'm not going to stop. This one. We'll wind it back from the Tudors. We've gone forward into the Stuarts. We're going to wind it back to John of Gaunt, who, here known as the Red Prince. This book written by Helen Carr. I'm interviewing Helen in about a month's time. So again, if you're a patron, I will be asking you for questions to put to Helen about her writing on the Red Prince. This is a man you all should know about. So have a look at this book. Again, you can find the links to all these books on my Amazon shop. It's amazon.co.uk/shop/British history. I know some of you have trouble actually buying from there because you're in a different country. I don't know why Amazon make it so difficult, but if you follow that link anyway, I'm hoping you can see the books, so at least you can double check which ones I'm recommending for you. He was the Duke of Lancaster. His palace in London was called the Savoy Palace, which you have probably heard of, excuse me. And the Savoy Palace was completely destroyed during the Peasants' Revolt. If John of Gaunt had been at home, he probably would have been, well, I might ask Helen that. What does she think would actually have happened to John of Gaunt if he'd have been in London at the time? He was actually up north, and his house, the Savoy Palace, was broken into by the rebels and ransacked. Now, what they I don't know, spoil the story, but this is very, very sad, ironic. I don't know how you think, but they found barrels in the cellar, and they assumed they were barrels of wine or barrels of containing valuables, and they created a fire in the Great Hall of the Savoy Palace and stoked the fire with things they were finding from around the house and destroying them. What they didn't know was that John was beginning to collect a supply of gunpowder. And they popped that on the fire as well. Kaboom! No more Savoy Palace. And he must have been quite shaken by it. It was never rebuilt, as we know, and now it is the site of the Savoy Hotel in London. But anyway, so I will be interviewing Helen about John of Gaunt and all those sorts of events. So if you want to put your own question to Helen, go over and join my Patreon. It's patreon.com/British History. And it's £5 a month, and you can ask questions, put questions to historians. So I'll be speaking to Helen very soon, and I will be talking to Joanne Paul very soon as well. Yeah, kaboom, Colleen. I like that. Kaboom emoji in the comments. Fantastic. So I have one more place to tell you about. What time are we on? Oh yeah, that works out. But Marie, they were proper idiots considering that popping one open before dumping them on the fire, yeah, is common sense. I would have thought. I'm actually surprised that they weren't just nicking off with all the stuff. That, you know, the foremost thing in their mind was destruction. I mean, they were I'll get into this with Helen in the interview, I'm sure, but I'm loving the emojis in the comments. Please, more emojis in the comments. They were hellbent on destruction, and they were in London, and it wasn't just peasants. I mean, that's a really lazy term for it, really. They had genuine anger, justified anger about a tax that was brought in, a poll tax, which meant it was the same amount that was due regardless of ability to pay. And this was, of course, as always, by the way, your taxes now do the same. It's to fund a war. And they're sick of funding wars. They're sick of funding wars that aren't giving them any benefit. They're just being asked for more and more money. And they're not seeing any, like I say, they're not seeing any benefit. They're not seeing victories either. So I'll be talking to Helen about that. And like I say, you can put your questions to Helen as well if you're a patron. Now, there's another place I want to tell you about before I go. It's Worcester. I took, there was a couple, Lee might be on here, I'm not sure. And they came on tour with me in September. They're still here. They're doing a fantastic progress of the country, and they were popping past where I live and visiting Worcester. So I said, you must let me come and bother you for the day. So of course we went to Worcester Cathedral, which I will mention a little bit more in a moment. But I took them somewhere that is usually not on people's itinerary. Some people know about it, and hopefully excuse me, after me talking to you about it today, if you are ever in Worcester, you will know to go and see this place as well, and that is the Commandery. It's a bit of an odd name, not actually very clear, no one is, not just me, as to how it got that name. It was the it's best known, or I suppose the biggest story that attaches itself to that building is that it was the headquarters of the Royalist forces at the final battle of the English Civil Wars. Links back to the Stuart Summit and Julian's Julian's talk that he's going to give. But the last battle of the English civil wars of the 17th century was fought at Worcester. It was fought on a place which is now called Fort Royal Hill. And the commandery sits just at the bottom of that hill, and it was the headquarters for the royalist forces. Now, the royalist army lost. Charles II, legend has it, was in the tower of Worcester Cathedral and had to escape from there when he realised that the battle was lost. General Hamilton, who was heading the royalist forces that day, died in the commandery. You see it sometimes referred to as the Scottish army versus the English army, because by a lot of the soldiers fighting for the royalist cause by this point are Scottish. They've come down from Scotland. They will not return to Scotland. They lose. If they haven't died during the battle, many died following the battle. They were kept in horrendous conditions, and those who did survive were taken to Bristol and shipped as indentured slaves over to America. Boston was definitely one place they went to. And I think I'm quite fortunate. I've been around a while. There's a benefit to age, and that's the fact that I've been to the places, other places as well, but the commandery, when it was more enthusiast run, and they had a list that someone had put together of the names of people who had been captured, so Scottish people who'd been captured after the Battle of Worcester and was shipped to America. Indentured slavery is, they had to work for between 5 and 7 years to pay off their fare. But there was a list of names. So, and I must have had forethought, and I took pictures of that list, and I found that the other day, but it no longer exists in the museum. But so the commandery is known for being the headquarters of the royalist army during the English Civil Wars. During the last battle of the English Civil Wars, and General Hamilton dying there. And I'll talk about Charles II and his escape a bit more in a moment. But it also has there two more, I would say, just things you have to see, in my opinion. The first is the funeral pall of Arthur Tudor. So Henry VII's eldest son, with Elizabeth York, of course, the heir to the throne, Prince of Wales. He dies at Ludlow, not long after marrying Catherine of Aragon. And he's brought to Worcester to be buried, hence why the funeral pall could very well would have stayed in Worcester. Marie, is there a reason that we know of that the list was removed from the museum? Well, when I'm saying enthusiast run, that's not mean to meaning to be disparaging anyway, but it's lower tech. I mean, also it was a while ago, so it was literally a book of people who like a plastic book with like Polly Pockets in, that someone had printed off on a home computer, a home printer, and it was just there. So I don't think it's there's one list still there up on the wall with a list of names on one ship, but I will need to go back and double check all my photos, but I'm sure it had more of a list than just that one. It was quite extensive. Michael says, was Rose a surname on that list? I will check it out and have a look. But yes, it wasn't removed, I don't think, in any for any nefarious reasons. It's just that it was a bit low tech then it had a refurb, and it was then one list is put up on a nice big sign, but it's hidden. It's sort of around the corner of a room. I would personally put it in a more prominent position and explain more about what it was in a more straightforward manner. So, but yes, the funeral pall of Arthur Tudor is actually in the same room that General Hamilton died in. and it's incredibly beautifully embroidered large piece of cloth, which would have been draped over the coffin of Arthur Tudor when he was buried at Worcester Cathedral. So yeah, like I say, he died at Ludlow. He was taken to Bewdley, to Tickenhill Manor, which was a substantial manor which doesn't exist. It exists inside someone's house now, some of it, but you can't see anything of it. In Bewdley, it was taken there, and then there are varying accounts as to whether his body was brought to Worcester by road or by river. The River Severn runs through the middle of Bewdley, and it runs pretty much to the door of Worcester Cathedral and past the door of Worcester Cathedral. So I don't understand why they wouldn't have brought him by river, but there you go. If they didn't, they didn't. But I would, my money would be on a river procession for that. And he is buried in the cathedral. So I'll come back to that. But let me finish the Commandery first, and let me tell you about the other thing that you must see. So I was desperate to show Lee, who's the one of the couple who I showed around or accompanied on Sunday. I was desperate to show her these medieval wall paintings, and if you see my Instagram in the last couple of days, you'll see I've shared a reel with them on. And that is because the Commandery has a very long history, and part of the building was actually the infirmary of a hospital called St Wulfstan's Hospital. It's dedicated to St Wulfstan, who was an Anglo-Saxon bishop of Worcester. And on the walls are these paintings of saints, and on the ceiling, Christ in Majesty, presumably because if you're near the end, you're looking upwards. And they were whitewashed over at the dissolution of the monasteries, because as a monastic institution, even though it was staffed, that's not the right word, by lay brothers and sisters, it was closed down as well. You got to remember that. I mean, this is a place that cares for the sick, the elderly, people visiting the town on pilgrimage. It doesn't matter to Henry, of course, and it doesn't matter to his ministers, and it's closed down. But so these medieval wall paintings are covered over. They are not discovered until I think it's the 1930s or the end of the 1920s, when the building is a print workshop, and they're going to do renovations. And luckily, they discovered these paintings, and they managed to preserve them, and they are vivid. They are so colourful. They are really vivid, and you can walk up to them and really have a look at them closely there. And I got a wow when Lee walked in the room, which is exactly what I was looking for. I held back. I waited for her to walk in the room, and I got the reaction I was hoping for. Melissa, the whitewashing they did was a travesty. The paintings are beautiful, yes, but the whitewashing must have preserved them, because they're so vivid that there's no sun damage. There obviously are bits where it's not there, where they're not complete, where bits of the wall must have fallen off, or something has been damaged, but they're really, I mean, there's a lot of them left. The majority of the room is covered in these paintings. So if you're heading to Worcester, make sure you go to the Commandery. You'll see Arthur Tudor's pall, funeral pall. You'll see these medieval wall paintings, and you will be where the royalist fight was lost at the end of the English Civil Wars. It is about, I don't know, I'm not very good with distance, 500 meters, maybe not even that far, from Worcester Cathedral. And I mentioned earlier, Charles II was supposed to have, legend has it, he was at the top of the cathedral tower. Makes sense. There was a town wall all the way around Worcester, by the way, at this point. So the battle was taking place outside of the town wall. The Commandery sits just outside that wall that no longer exists. So you have to use your imagination. And the hill was just outside. So actually, with the city gates closed, there is some protection there for Charles. So it does make sense that he would be on the top of the tower. He would have been able to see over to the hill. In fact, if you stand on the top of Fort Royal Hill now, you can easily see the tower, and vice versa. And Charles II escaped from there. He actually escaped to a house down on, I don't think it's Friar Street. Friar Street goes into another, and then and he went into a house there. It was changed into very quickly into servant's clothing and made his escape. But his escape, I'm going to do. Hi Renee, how are you doing? I'm going to do I think I'm going to do a video about his escape. I'm sure there's other ones, loads of others out there if you want to find one in the meantime. But his escape took 3 weeks. Charles II does not just escape the Battle of Worcester and make his way to the sea and get over to the continent. He takes 3 weeks, and it is an incredibly dangerous journey. Everyone is looking for him, and he's very nearly captured on a number of occasions, of course, including the legendary hiding in a tree, the Boscobel Oak, which dies, by the way. I spoke about this on History After Dark last night a little bit. Dies because of souvenir hunters in the Victorian times. You can't take bits of tree without the tree hurting. So that tree is actually gone. But this is why we have pubs called the Royal Oak. That's back to that. So it stands to reason that it's a true story. So he escapes. Anyway, so that's Worcester Cathedral, but also, of course, I mentioned Arthur Tudor's funeral there. His chantry and tomb are at Worcester. And again, I can't remember now whether I've already shared the reel or whether I'm about to share the reel about of his tomb. If you're interested in knowing what all the heraldry on the tomb actually means, there's a blog in Patreon. Just to keep mentioning it. But it's ornate, and you can see the similarities to the Henry VII Chapel, which is being built at Westminster around the same time, and it's thought that the same mason was used. So and Arthur is so people say, well, why was he buried at Worcester? Well, he dies at Ludlow, and like I've explained, the route down from Ludlow through Bewdley to Worcester. So there's that. But there's the fact that it's far enough away from London that they don't draw too much attention. I think this is David Starkey's theory, that he doesn't draw too much attention to the fact that they've lost the heir to the throne. They have Henry. All's going to be well. All's going to be fine. We've got Henry, but he's not an Arthur. This is April, I think, when he dies. The roads are rubbish anyway. You don't. How long would it take to get a body to London? And there is a precedent for a royal burial at Worcester. King John, we know he's a bit of a shit, but anyway, King John is buried at the High Altar. He was buried between the tombs of St Wulstan and St Dunstan, that no longer exist. And actually, if you see the tomb of John now, you'll see it's a chest tomb with his effigy, the earliest known effigy of a monarch. That's there. The chest tomb, however, would not have originally been there. So John was excavated, I want to say again in the Victorian era. I can't give you an exact date, but when they reinterred him, they created this chest tomb for him. Originally, the effigy and the slab on which it lies would have been at floor level, so more like you see the tombs in the Temple Church in London, or Fontevraud, I can't say the word, Abbey. More they would have been on the floor, but you don't see that at Worcester. So there's the royal precedent there. There's already a King of England at Worcester. So there's reasons that were used. Now, you also, if you go to Worcester, following the footsteps of Elizabeth I. I think it was 1572 off the top of my head. Might have got that wrong, but she visited Worcester, and she's known to have visited the tomb of Arthur, of her uncle. And so when you go in there, you are, and the step up into the chantry is so dipped. Well, there's a couple of steps actually. They're so dipped. You are following in the footsteps of goodness knows how many people, because it's really dipped. Including though Elizabeth I herself. There's some statues in there that excuse me, are defaced. And I always thought, and I'm still not convinced this isn't true, that these were defaced in the Reformation, so under Edward VI, and maybe even further by in the English Civil Wars, knowing of course that Worcester was rampaged by the parliamentarians after they won at that final battle of Worcester. I mean, they didn't hold back. You do not want to know what they did. And so so these statues are defaced. But then another theory has come to light that actually when Elizabeth visited, they put up some kind of plasterboard at the far end of the chantry to cover up the statue or statuettes at the end of Arthur's chantry that had not been finished. Whether they were embarrassed by this fact, or it would have been a slight on the Queen, not sure. But this plasterboard had some sort of "We love you, Queenie" message on there. But in order to do that, the theory goes that they slice the front off these statuettes. Now, I don't know where the logic is to destroy what seemed like almost complete statuettes and not just finish them off. Why you would make it so they could never be completed, I don't know. So, a book about the English Civil Wars. I do have one. Well, join the Stuart Summit. That would be a really good start. Tickets go on sale tomorrow. I'm hosting on Eventbrite, so it'll be dead easy wherever you are in the world. And Julian Humphreys will be talking about the English Civil Wars, but of course it comes into the discussion with about Henrietta Maria and of Charles II as well. There is a book that I have, which I can't see at the moment, so I can't tell you what it is, but I will share it later if I can find it again. Michael says Torrigiano did Henry VII's tomb. He did, but he did the brass work on the tomb, and so I'm talking about the Henry VII chapel, and the masonry basically. Chewing gums. I'm always amazed by a lot of very old paintings. They're always in stunning detail and colour. A lot of the monarchs' portraits are amazing. Absolutely. I always think George IV's hair in his portrait is like a style you get these days still. Fashion comes around. So anyone who's interested, if you are genuinely interested in doing someone's asking me about doing a filming work together, then you can contact me at office@britishhistorytours.com. So Worcester Cathedral. I mean, that's just a couple of things there. The cloisters, actually, I know Gloucester, nearby Gloucester, is known for its beautiful cloisters, but it is they are complete at Worcester as well. Shall I tell you the legend about the Viking on the door? If you put some thumbs up in the chat, I will tell you about the Viking on the door. In the meantime, the chapter house also is still there at Worcester Cathedral, and you walk in and you think, oh my goodness, the whole thing is just stark. There's the stained glass is just all plain. The ceiling is white. There's always a coffee machine, by the way. They do events in there, and there's always coffee. It's always a nice smell of coffee, and chairs and things. But then you start to have a little closer look at the walls. And the closer you look, it's a bit like dust. When you start to see it, you see more of it. But in the chapter house, it's not dust, it's medieval wall paintings again. Paintings from when it was a working chapter house for the cathedral, when it had when there was actually a chapter there. So that's pretty cool, isn't it? So thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. I can see I'm getting lots of thumbs up. And thank you, everyone who's bought me a badge. So I must say thank you again. So I now have badges on Instagram, which is rather fabulous. And the more badges I get, the quicker I will get a new microphone, rather than have, you can't see it at the moment, but this is the microphone I'm using for YouTube, and wrapped around it is the microphone that I'm using for Instagram because it's broken. Excuse me. So the Viking on the door. Okay, here we go. Oh, thank you. Love my hair. Thank you very much. So the Viking on the door. Now, I mentioned that Worcester is on the River Severn. And the River Severn is it's quite wide at this point. In fact, Bewdley, that I've already mentioned, is upstream, was an inland port. So you can get ships up here. Now, the Vikings knew all the ways into the country that they wanted, including the River Severn coming up past Worcester, except they didn't go past Worcester. They used to stop off and have a little rampage, and the people of the town, presumably it was a sort of town size but at that point, but the people of Worcester were just victims to these horrendous attacks by Vikings, where they'd be pillaging and raping and torturing and awful things. And on one occasion, this is the legend, on one occasion, a Viking strike happened again. Everyone from from Worcester hides in the hills. They get out, they're hiding, and so everything is being rampage. They go on their normal rampage. For some reason, one of the Danes decides that they'd like a bell out of the bell tower. And so this is a bit difficult to come by. And he's got to climb the tower. So he's climbed the tower. He gets left behind. Now, you might be a big old brave Viking when there's a lot of you. But what are you going to do when there's only one of you? Well, you haven't got a lot of choice what happens to you, because when the people came back and they found this lone Viking, I can just imagine him. I think it was a bell he was trying to get. It was up in the bell tower anyway, somewhere high up. He got left behind. Maybe he was hiding up there because he got left behind. The people of Worcester, sick and tired of these raids, looking for revenge. And shut your ears off now if you are of a nervous disposition or you're eating. But they skin him alive. And they nail his skin. Yeah, payback. They nail his skin to the door. Don't ask me whether it's north, east, west, south. I'm not very good with that. I think it's the west door. But anyway, the door which faces the riverside. Crazy. Indeed. Crazy. So don't go trying to pinch people's bells. Or marauding or pillaging and all that other stuff. People don't like it. They don't like it, and eventually they'll turn. So yeah, so I think that was a warning. Now this is supposed to be complete legend, and then they did some analysis. The doors that are there now, by the way, are not the doors that were originally there, but they did some analysis on the doors, and they did find something. They did find human DNA, traces of human DNA on the door, whether that's the skin or not. Really, I regret not shutting my ears now. Maybe don't watch The Last Kingdom. You know, I always recommend watching The Last Kingdom. Maybe not. It's quite graphic. So I'm going to go because I think I need some water to get rid of this cough. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you again to everyone with super chats on Instagram, YouTube, and badges on Instagram. Thank you so much. I'm not here next week because I will hopefully be sunning myself on the continent, but you will be able to tune in tomorrow for Visiting Tudor Britain, where I'll be talking more about Kenilworth Priory and St Nicholas's Church in Kenilworth. And I'll also be on History After Dark next Wednesday. We are probably talking, we said it was going to be a surprise room, but we have been talking today, and we're probably going to be doing something about misnomers in history, mishits, which should be really fun to do. So thank you all very much. I hope you have a fabulous, fabulous day. And